Hey, welcome into the Snap episode 209. Your boy Mac here, joined as always by my co-host Lando. Look, we are finding ourselves in a week where football is going to be played this Thursday. The Hall of Fame game between the Jags and the Raiders. We're not going to be seeing any Travis Etienne or Trevor Lawrence. That's okay, though, because we got a long build-up. Let's enjoy this month of August. Let's not rush it away. We got lots to get into today. News out of training camp. Suspensions have been settled-ish. And we're going to do a mock draft-ish. We're going to do a mock draft. Starts in about 15 minutes. We're going to get through the news and notes and then get into some mocking with a third round reversal for those of you who have been asking about it. But I got my guy, Lando. What's been going on?
Mac, I'm doing great. It's August and football season is just around the corner. I can't wait to get into it. So if you're watching this and you want to join some of our mocks, make sure to join our Discord. That's where we send out the invitation first. It's a great community where you can bounce some questions off some like-minded fantasy players. If you have keeper questions, draft strategies, all that stuff. And August is the time when content starts to amp up. Not only will we be doing our weekly show, but we're getting into the shorts. So if you have suggestions about what you want videos on, what you want some more in-depth analysis on, let us know in our Discord or in the comments down below. If you like our content, like this video, and share it to your friends because we're growing a community of a lot of really great guys. So we can't wait to get to fantasy season, Mac. It's really close.
It's right there, like around the corner. We're starting to get training camps ramping up with activity increasing. Sometimes we run into some injuries, and I don't know about you, but it seems like maybe the Denver Broncos are training in Baltimore, just torn ACLs left, right, and center. But we did get the news today that Tim Patrick, who they paid last year in the offseason, as well as Cortland Sutton, to be a part of this team long term, they are going to be without him this year, 2022 season. No Tim Patrick. The question here is, outside of your like dynasty leagues and your best balls, you probably weren't drafting a whole lot of Tim Patrick. Does this give a boost potentially to anybody else on this team, or is this just going to be sort of a role that is absorbed by a couple key individuals? It's not like a KJ Hamler can run up and take this job. Will it be dispersed, or do you believe that KJ Hamler is the guy?
I think that people who liked Tim Patrick really kind of hated on Jerry Jeudy and thought that Tim Patrick would kind of supplant Jeudy as the number 2 role. Now this kind of really cements Jeudy as the number 2 to Cortland Sutton. We haven't seen a breakout performance from Jeudy yet. I think everyone is projecting Cortland Sutton to lead the way and really have a productive season with Russell Wilson behind center. So I think Jeudy will be a very serviceable wide receiver 2, that fringe kind of mid-20s wide receiver by the end of the year. But we know he's got upside because he has Russell Wilson. So it's always touchdown upside. The offense is going to be good. That division is incredibly good, and they're going to have to throw the football a lot. So I think Jeudy is now really, really safe. So depending on his draft cost, and we'll find out today how high he's going in drafts. But depending on his cost, I think this really cements Jeudy as the number 2 and a good number 2.
And Tim Patrick was fairly efficient in his role, but in a low volume offense the last couple of years with Bridgewater, Drew Lock, a couple other signal callers, only had 85 targets last year, and the year before 79. Could he have seen 100 plus targets this year? Probably that's within the realm of possibilities with how talented Russell Wilson is, but it's not like there was, an abundance of opportunity for Tim Patrick. This was a tertiary role, and I could see this being absorbed very easily through Sutton, Jeudy, Javonte Williams, and probably where most people want the targets to go, Albert O.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. What's next, Mac? What do you want to get into next as far as news? Deshaun Watson.
A couple questions coming in on Twitter, on our Discord. Where do you draft Deshaun Watson in a 1 quarterback league? And we can get into 2 quarterback and super flex because I think each format has its own opinion for me at least. But in a 1 quarterback league right now, the mock we're going to do tonight has Deshaun Watson currently just outside the 11th round. What do you like about that ADP right now in the beginning of August? And where do you think it might go?
Yeah, that's
Do
the
you like
thing.
him in a 1 QB league?
Where it's going to go right now, that's great draft position. I would take Watson there. We know 6 games, and he could be that difference maker going down the stretch, get into championship week. However, I think it's going to start going higher, and I think it's going to get to the point where he's going to be in that Aaron Rodgers range, and that is way too rich for my blood. I won't be drafting Deshaun Watson in the first 10 rounds. I'm not going to have that bench spot waiting for 6 weeks because he hasn't played football in a year and a half. And I would rather have that position, that flyer wide receiver that we all love, the running back that could break out like a James Cook, like AJ Dillon, Miles Sanders, Ken Walker, Kareem Hunt. Those guys are so more valuable than a Deshaun Watson that's suspended for 6 games in a 1 quarterback league. So it's a onesie position, and you can get those quarterbacks in good matchups. You can get a Trey Lance, a Derek Carr that can actually do well in those 6 games and down the stretch.
Totally agree. When I look at his counterparts in those rounds, you bring up other non-quarterback positional players. When you look at quarterbacks that are available in 1 QB leagues, you got Justin Fields sitting right there 4 picks earlier. And it's like, if you're going to spend that 11 round capital on a guy like Deshaun Watson, why would you not just spend it on Justin Fields?
Trevor Lawrence.
Like Justin Fields has that mobile piece to his game that you kind of like in Deshaun Watson. Yeah, he's a better thrower of the football. He has a very long list, developed resume of making really quality throws and really like taking over games. But to your point, we haven't seen him in a while. He's in a new system. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. Now,
what about 2 quarterback leagues as well as super flex? Does your opinion shift a little bit? Do you come at it from a different perspective? What's the case there for you?
Yeah, it's really tough. I would reach on him a little bit more, but then you're in that position where you want to take now 3 quarterbacks in the top 8 rounds. And that, again, there's a lot of really good players, especially in 2 quarterback and super flex leagues, that falls down the draft because of the need and the thirst for quarterback. So I probably won't. I'm just going to stay away in those formats, take the quarterbacks that I like that are safe early, like Classic Mike is talking about, Trey Lance and Derek Carr. I'll take those guys. We know they're going to play every single game, and also get those really good wide receiver and running back positions. I'm just going to stay away from Deshaun in 2 quarterback leagues.
To give you an idea of where he's going right now on Sleeper and 2 QB mocks, Deshaun Watson is currently it's like 702, 86th player off the board, which is very, very early for somebody who's going to miss 6 games. So if you were playing a 2 QB strategy, in my opinion, properly, you're going to have 2 quarterbacks within the first 4 rounds at the very latest. And when you have to go back and draft a 3rd quarterback in the single digit rounds, I think you're giving up a lot of value at other positions. So not only do you have to go out and draft, like a Herbert or a Lamar Jackson to carry the load, to provide some safety and some upside for your team, you need to kind of double back with like a Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, a Matt Ryan.
You have to. You're forced to.
2nd or 3rd. You're forced to because of how many quarterbacks you have to play. Superflex is a little bit different, where you can actually, if you wanted to take Deshaun Watson as your QB2, you could fill that Superflex spot with a non-QB. I also don't advertise that. It's not like I'm going out of my way to say, yes, go get Deshaun Watson in the 7th round. I think you're paying a pretty steep price for somebody who's going to be absent 1/3 of the season, and then we don't know what he looks like from there. So I'm probably just going to go hands off on Deshaun unless he just completely falls down the board in a 2 QB league, like to the 10th or 11th round. I'd probably be in there because of value, but at current ADP, I think I'm just out.
And what needs to be said as well. Right now, we know it's going to be a minimum of 6 games. We will know, unless you're drafting right this second in your real draft, we will know by the time drafts come along in the next 3 weeks if it is actually a 6-game suspension. If it's more, there's always that chance. But hopefully your drafts in your regular season-long leagues wait until the week before the actual NFL season starts.
Like Classic Mike brings up, could Goodell appeal the suspension and add to it that? Yes, absolutely. We know it's going to be 6, but it could be longer. And hopefully we'll have some clarity on that. Hopefully the NFL does right by us fantasy players going into that. Let's go to a nicer side. Debo Samuel signed an extension with the 49ers. In his contract, there are incentives that are fantasy relevant.
Yeah.
He can earn an extra $150,000 for 3 rushing touchdowns in a season. He can also earn, I believe it's $600,000 for 300 plus rushing yards. So he had been very vocal in that I don't want to play this role on this team. They structured his contract around, we want you to do this for us because you're very good at it. And it fits into what we want to do with the football. So does that boost your fantasy confidence about Debo Samuel?
It absolutely does. Last year, he ran for 365 yards, and this incentive is 380 plus for 650,000 to be exact. And this now will give him the opportunity to run a lot more, and he will want to run to earn these incentives. Now Debo is going at the back of the second round in PPR drafts. I could see him going mid-second, early first, because he could be that difference maker at the position. He's a running back, wide receiver hybrid. The offense will be around him. It will be Shanahan is one of the best coaches in the league to design an offense around a single player. We saw that with Ayuk when Debo was out, and we saw that with Debo last year. It was wild. And I think Trey Lance is going to rely on his star player, and he got paid for it. I think this is phenomenal for Debo Samuel. Mac, when I was thinking about this, who would you rather have this year? A player that everyone is expecting a big breakout from, CeeDee Lamb, or Debo Samuel in a half PPR league? It's tough.
I'm very bullish on CeeDee Lamb with the departure of Amari Cooper.
Yep.
Because of what his projected target share is to be, and Michael Gallup also probably not going to be in the lineup for the first couple of weeks anyways. That's a tough one, honestly. Like I said last year, if Debo Samuel has a year of health and is elite, I would boost him in my rankings. I would feel a little bit better about him, but I just don't. Right. I just don't feel the confidence that I should based on the year that he had. But I think I'm just going to have to go with Debo, ride the hot hand, and just go with, where the money is, follow the money. That's so typically what we see.
Yeah, it's so fun to project CD to take that step forward, to be that Justin Jefferson type player. And I love CeeDee Lamb. Mac and I literally just did a mock draft before we started, and I took CeeDee Lamb beginning of the second. Love him, love the offense. But with Debo and all of his incentives, what we just saw this past year, it's definitely a conversation. I'll probably flip-flop back and forth and have a little bit of both. I'm not going to go all in on Debo because, like Mac just said, he could get injured and he's going to touch the ball so much. The probability of him getting injured again increases with every tackle. Like, that's just how it works. And especially if he's touching the football on the ground, like literally being a running back. So
yeah,
there's obviously a chance of him getting hurt.
I don't know if I would go into projecting him for an injury. You are right, though. The more you touch the ball, the more chance you have it getting injured. But yes, I think Shanahan's going to be smart. I think he's going to find a way to make Trey Lance's role not as dependent on him as a thrower and more so of like, this is what we can do on offense. We can run some zone schemes. We can get the ball in Samuel and Ayuk and, a variety of running backs that we have. We can even let Trey Lance be mobile on reads and options. I guess I'm bullish on Debo as a talent, but it just doesn't feel as good as it should. Yeah. And I think that's just having this layer of Trey Lance, but also his injury history. I guess it all kind of comes together. But yeah, before we dwell on this too long, I want to get into Alvin Kamara. We found out that his court case is delayed 60 days. That likely pushes any decision on suspension until the 2023 season. So if you are an Alvin Kamara dynasty owner, or you are wanting to take him in your home leagues, there's a little bit of extra confidence that you can put into that draft pick and not thinking that there's a suspension looming. It would be devastating, though, if there were to be a ruling midseason and Alvin Kamara is just out for your fantasy playoffs. It's the only thing in the back of my mind that I could be spooked about, but you got to feel good about Alvin Kamara going into 2023 or 2022, I should say.
Yeah, and his draft stock is falling, so you can get Alvin in the mid-second round, and that's great value for a guy that could win you your league and has done really well throughout the years. And I hope it's still next year, and there's very much a possibility of suspension next season.
Yeah. Well, that's the news and the notes. Hopefully we don't come to you next week with too much injury news. Hopefully lots of hype pieces, and you're going to see tons of those flying around. Just a little pro tip: pick and choose. Typically, all of the good stuff you hear is fluff, and all of the bad stuff you hear is legit.
That's how it works, right?
That is exactly how it works. And when you hear Travis Etienne is the standout at camp and he's blowing everyone away, like he should be. He was the 25th overall pick for a reason. When you hear Tim Patrick tore his ACL, that's you got to take that.
It's all confirmation bias. You know that. If you have Etienne on your team, you love the news. If you got James Robinson on your team, you're like, well, it's all just fluff.
It's all just fluff. It's 2 minutes after 8:45. We're going to jump into our mock draft. We are drafting a 12-team full PPR draft with a third round reversal. Lots of people are asking about third round reversals. They want to know some strategies, some tips and tricks. You're drafting out of the 1. I'm drafting out of the 12. There's going to be a total difference in the way that we prepare for this third round going the opposite way. It's going to favor me just a little bit, and it's going to disadvantage you. But the idea with a third round reversal, and I don't know if I completely agree with it, but it's intended to balance out that team like you who's going to get an elite player like Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey. And for those that maybe jump to the wide receiver position with a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, it's going to offset them going into the third. So for those teams that maybe had to take the last of a tier at the running back position, or, same with wide receiver, coming back in the third, they pick that value back up, and it continues to snake in that direction for the rest of the draft. Early thoughts on this as I get the draft going?
No, let's get it going. I'm excited to start playing. It's a PPR mock draft, and I'm going with a positional advantage at the position. Christian McCaffrey at the 101.
Oh, you changed it. I thought you were going to go JT.
Well, you know what? I got to switch it up here from time to time. In a full PPR draft, I think McCaffrey has a chance to be far and away the best running back in football. Now, best player in football, really. Now, of course, there is an injury risk, which I touched on a little bit earlier. He touches the ball so much. He's not a big guy on the ground, through the air. McCaffrey, has been hurt the past 2 years. If you drafted him, you've been burned severely.
The scars
are probably still fresh. But I think McCaffrey could be good, and I hope he is this year.
Easy saying, by the way, third round reversal. I saw that right away. It's on the thumbnail. It's in the title. And I said it a couple times. But it might sneak up on you. It honestly might. On a per game basis, Christian McCaffrey is the most valuable fantasy asset in a full PPR league. He will have an edge on Jonathan Taylor. His whole thing will be, how available can you be to your team? Now, they did bring in Deonta Foreman to play a role, who had a really good campaign last year in filling in for Derrick Henry.
Sure, yeah.
Chuba Hubbard had some spurts, I guess, here and there, a little bit of fantasy value, but he's going to be less integral to the offense with Foreman coming in. I believe Foreman will be the backup to McCaffrey. It's not a 1-for-1 replacement for sure. But it's going to be interesting, man. I personally am going to take Jonathan Taylor because I don't want to be subject to those burns again for a third straight year. So I'm gonna lick my own wounds and move forward with Jonathan Taylor as my 101. But I understand the argument for Christian McCaffrey wholeheartedly. I get it. We're living in a little bit of trauma.
Yeah, for sure. And as if the sky is blue, the grass is green, Scott picks Derrick Henry in a PPR league.
What is going on?
That's how it works. But
a very interesting board so far. So for those of you that are following us on podcast, the draft opened up Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, and then we saw a little run of wide receivers as it is a full PPR league. Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, followed by Austin Eckler, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, and then Najee Harris. Interesting board. I haven't seen it this wide receiver heavy in the first round, but this is why we do mock drafts.
Yeah. Easy was in the comments, and now he's gonna auto pick. You hate to see that, Mr. Easy, but that's how she goes. You gotta be on the ball here, commenting on the video and mock drafting. That's how we do. But I love the early wide receiver strategy, Mac, like you were just talking about. Big fan of that. Now you got back-to-back picks.
I do.
I do have back-to-back on the board with Deandra Swift. I feel like those two players are phenomenal.
Yeah, Stephon Diggs is probably the one player that I don't think I can get away from. But I've also got to think, coming back to me at the next round is where I've got to. I'm going to throw Stephon Diggs in here. And then I love Deandra Swift. Yeah. See, my strategy here, and I typically didn't think that Stephon Diggs would be available to me. My strategy here was to go with 2 pass-catching running backs, ideally, and then pick up some value at wide receiver in the beginning of the third. But with Stephon Diggs sitting there, the volume is going to be fantastic for him. Deandra Swift is one of the best pass-catching backs in the league. I do believe in him. I'm very, very bullish on Swift. So for me, that's a smash pick, but I intended to go running back there. So a little bit difference in strategy. My other consideration was going to be Kamara and Swift.
Yeah, Kamara Smith
like Diggs.
would have been really good. You could have easily also went Diggs CeeDee Lamb or Diggs Debo Samuel, and then you would have gotten a potential like Zeke Elliott type player in the third round, which is also interesting.
Which Zeke might make his way to me. You never know. His ADP right now is so undeservingly low. But it seems like the running back talent is being shifted down the board. It's not like previous years where you see running backs just so heavy through the first 2 to 3 rounds. There's really those wide receivers making their way up the draft board. So to give you an idea, like Leonard Fournette, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner are all going to be available likely at my next pick. David Montgomery, Cam Akers. These are all starting caliber running backs.
Oh, absolutely. And I really like the early wide receiver strategy with Robo Chris and Mark both going early wide receiver. I think this really sets up good for this PPR strategy. Big fan of that. And even AJ Berg here that went Kupp and Andrews.
Yeah.
Really good strategy. I like it.
It's going to be interesting to see how the teams that started with elite tight ends, Easy Daddy going Joe Mixon and Travis Kelce, and then AJ Berg going Kupp and Andrews. I am always interested to see how those teams work out later on in the draft. We do have a very simple, traditional roster setting: 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex, and then 5 bench spots for 13 total spots. It is back to me in the beginning of the third. Josh Allen is just sitting there for me. Super tempting to stack with Stephon Diggs. However, that is not the play. It's not the advantageous play. I'm just going to go with what I said earlier. I'm going to take the value on Zeke, and I'm going to continue to just expect him to be their guy, the one that they are loyal to, undeservingly.
Jerry Jones came out and said, I mean, he's the guy we need to get the football, and they paid him like that. So when Tony Pollard looks better than Zeke, they're still going to feed Zeke. That's just how it is. That's how the Cowboys roll. I went, Mac, with the hyper fragile running back strategy with Barkley and Kamara. Could you get two more injury prone running backs? Probably not.
No.
But they both catch football. And they're both very talented.
We saw Saquon Barkley go off the board to you here at the back of the second round. I want to get your temperature on Saquon Barkley. It's not a guy that we've talked a whole ton about, and hopefully we'll get this out before your pick is up. But we see Saquon Barkley making his return to camp, said to be 100% healthy. What do you think about Saquon Barkley going into 2022?
Yeah, I just said that. I mean, he's super fragile. He's been injured so often. I don't know what to make of him. I haven't been taking, either McCaffrey or Barkley in very many drafts, but they're both very talented. The New York Giants feel like the vibes are good around them right now. He catches the football a lot. He will get the bell cow workload. The reports out of camp seem great. First offseason that he's been completely healthy. I think it's a really good value at the back of the second round.
It is. Like historically, Saquon Barkley, 17.5 points per game when healthy.
Yeah. That means that was including top 5 running back being terrible.
Yes. He averages almost 6 targets a game with Daniel Jones. That would have been good enough for 5th amongst active running backs last year. Like the same way that you perceive Christian McCaffrey and that potential upside is the same way you got to look at Barkley. Totally. Like these are two running backs who, if healthy, are elite league-winning pieces. Do you remember a couple years ago when, I can't remember who asked the question, but somebody in the industry was asking a variety of analysts, would you rather take Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley and not draft until the 7th round, or would you rather just have all of your picks at like the 107?
Yeah, I remember that narrative. It was fun. It was fun to discuss that.
And it was Smitty. It was the fantasy football show with Smitty.
Right.
And he had like Matthew Berry and Mike the Fantasy Hitman. He had all these guys just like perplexed. They didn't really know how to answer the question. And I thought about it too. I'm like, man, that was a crazy question. Because you're not going to get them both. They were consensus like 1-2, right?
Yes, they were.
And interesting draft so far. You started with McCaffrey and Barkley, got hit with a 3rd round reversal, and went DJ Moore at the back of the 3rd, Deante Johnson to open up the 4th. I did see something about Deontay Johnson and the Steelers not working towards a deal currently. Talks kind of fell apart. Does that concern you, or do you think that's something that will just settle itself as the season comes closer?
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm not too concerned that he doesn't have a deal with the Steelers. I don't love Deontay Johnson. It was more of kind of a panic pick because I don't really love Terry McLaurin. I know you're a big fan of Jalen Waddle. I just can't really get over that hump.
That's fine.
Maybe it was just kind of, I know I needed wide receivers, and I feel like Deontay Johnson is as safe as it gets. I don't know. Who do you think is going to be the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Do you think it's going to be Trubisky, or is Pickett or is it going to be half and half kind of the season? Trubisky seems to like to hyper target one guy. It could be Deontay. Yeah. He could be that target monster. He's the best overall wide receiver. It's just we're not really sure about the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh.
No, and I actually don't think they need to start Kenny Pickett this year. They got Mitch for a good value, and I think that he at least has some starting quarterback caliber, some experience. There's no real reason to rush Pickett onto the field if they want him to be their guy like long term. So
Sure.
I'm okay with him sitting. Just let Trubisky do his thing. Does this team really have like a chance to compete this year is the question for me. And I think the answer is no. Like with the Bengals ascending themselves coming off of a Super Bowl visit, with the Ravens projected to also be very, very good, Pittsburgh's probably in a tough spot to grab even like a wild card.
I mean, they haven't missed a playoff in 10 years. I think the number is, it's been a crazy amount of years that they've consecutively made the playoffs. So I think Trubisky does give them the best opportunity, unless Pickett just comes out flying from the get-go and forces their hand. But so if it is Trubisky, if the reports are real and you're right at taking your time with Kenny Pickett, you don't want to ruin him for the future. Is Deante a good pick in the 4th round, or would you rather take a guy like Mike Williams, Courtland Sutton, Waddle, Cooper, we know that Deshaun's going to be their second or 2/3 of the season? What are your thoughts? Because, I mean, Deante's been super solid. I don't know if I like the pick. I don't know if I hate the pick. He was PPR wide receiver 8. He's going the 4th round. That's pretty good value with a hobbled Big Ben, noodle arm, Big Ben.
Noodle arm. Sorry, I was deciding there between.
Sorry, I didn't realize you were on the clock.
Yeah, I desperately wanted to take either Gibson or McLaurin. I didn't want to take them both, though. It's way too much exposure to Commanders football. So I ended up going Gibson, and then Darren Waller was just kind of sitting there, and I had my eye on Pitts, Kittle, or Waller kind of making its way to me. I thought if one of them made it to me, I would take. Jalen Waddle was ultimately my pick, but he unfortunately went. So, what were you, about Deontay Johnson? What was your
just kind of what are your thoughts on him? Is he a value at the early 4th round, or do you prefer a guy like Mike Williams, Sutton, Cooper, Waddle?
I mean, you know how I feel about Courtland Sutton. I've always thought that he was an elite talent. Someone who, when given the volume, could be very, very good for fantasy football. And we kind of saw that in little batches last year, but it's so tough to shout from the rooftops how good Courtland Sutton is when he's getting the football from Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock or whoever else it's been. So with Russell Wilson, I think I'm very, very bullish on Courtland Sutton. I'm a little bit, it's a little bit of a fade for Deante Johnson this year for me. I mean, I understand how good he is in terms of commanding a workload and delivering on his touches, but will those touches come like they did with Big Ben? And I don't know if it was like he was Ben's favorite target, or he was just in a range where Ben could deliver the football, like, inside 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. I don't know. But I'm not overly bullish on Deontay Johnson. I would much rather have Courtland Sutton, Jalen Waddle, heck, even Amari Cooper, I think, is somebody who gets a huge boost. Like, I was okay with Cooper when it was just him and Jacoby Brissett potentially for the year, but now that he gets Deshaun for 2/3 of the season, I'm definitely more in on Amari Cooper than I was before.
Yeah, classic Mike said he will scream from the rooftops for you for Courtland Sutton. And I mean, Mike,
and I'll be there with you, brother,
this season, but we've been screaming his praises for years. We're on record for a long time loving Courtland Sutton. And you know what the Steelers need to do? They need to trade Deante to the Packers. If the Packers got Deontay Johnson, boy, that guy's a top 2-round pick. He's going right beside Mike Evans.
It's never going to happen.
I know.
The Packers are the most boring franchise in the world.
Yep. True.
Opening up my draft, I went Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Swift, Ezekiel Elliott, Antonio Gibson, and Darren Waller. Not typically the team I would put together, but I do like the running back options, the pass catching that they provide, and then Waller is a positional advantage, as we've seen some teams take already in this draft. 5 tight ends off the board, 4 quarterbacks. Allen was the earliest at the 3.2. Then we had Mahomes at the 3.4, Herbert and Lamar Jackson going in the early 4th. Interesting to see that AJ Burke stacked up Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. We're going to come back to this team at the end. I do want to see how this one works out. Only has one running back right now in Leonard Fournette to go with Jerry Jeudy and Cooper Kupp. So pretty savvy draft room, though. A lot of regulars, a lot of really solid fantasy players who we have competed with in the past, in our own listener leagues, in our home leagues. So I trust this group. I got some faith. That does remind me, though, if you want to play in the 2022 listener league, go ahead and join our Discord. Leave us a message in the listener league channel, and we will be picking some players. We're going to be picking somebody tonight also to join this group, where we will be competing this year for a Cam Akers signed football and a PSA 10 Cam Akers rookie card. I do have this football right behind me here. For those of you that are hanging out with us on YouTube, you can see it here, but that Cam Akers beautiful signed NFL football from Pristine Auction. We're going to be giving that away to our listener league champion. We did have it to give away last year, but we won our own league. It's crazy.
We won our own league, and we'll probably win it again.
Run it back to back.
Why not? I know you brought up AJ Berg, and I love the team, and I mean he's going full stack on Ravens with J.K. Dobbins.
Mm-hmm.
Any other team that stands out to you early as a nice strategy to start us off here, Mac?
Classic Mike had my eye with the Eckler, Javonte Williams start, and then Higgins, Sutton, Robinson. You lost me at Amon-Ra St. Brown, though. I get it. He's just not a guy that I believe in, unfortunately. But I do like the team. Robo Chris also has a good draft going. Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Hall, Mitchell, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So good balance.
I mean, really, with Clyde going in the 6th round, we talked about it in our kind of this or that running backs. Yep. And I mean, that's good value. You can't go wrong with that.
I also really like Tebow fan, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, David Montgomery, really good stable of backs. And then following up with Mike Williams, Brandon Cooks, Rashad Bateman. I do like that group. Mike Williams is, again, not a my guy per se, but I do like Cooks and Bateman as reliable options there for you. So I would have picked Courtland Sutton over Mike Williams.
Yeah. I mean, Mike Williams is in a really good, he's in a great offense. He showed last year he could perform. He got paid this offseason too. I know you're just not a big fan of Big Mike.
No, I'm not, unfortunately. I'm going to take Juju Smith-Schuster here at the back of the 6th. All signs point to him just being the guy for Patrick Mahomes. And I'm just going to have to bank on that, honestly. Really tempting here with Joe Burrow sitting as, the next quarterback off the board. However, I'm going to refrain from taking him, and I'm going to go elsewhere. The question is, where do I go? And I believe it has to be the wide receiver position. And I just auto-drafted, unfortunately. Yeah, I got Joe Burrow. Awesome. Sweet. I thought I had way more time. What happened there?
I don't know what happened.
I don't know.
That was weird. Because it felt like you just picked Juju.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm going to have to run that back. Either 30 seconds went way too quick or something happened. Who would my pick have been, though? I mean, could I have waited on DeAndre Hopkins for those 6 games? Probably not. I think it's way too early to do that. Gabe Davis is far too high in ADP.
Yeah. You would like him in another round or 2 later, but he's...
Yeah, exactly. I think if I was looking at wide receiver there, like just taking a chance on Drake London or even, hitting a sophomore player like Devontae Smith is probably where I would have went.
That would have been a good pick. But you're in that weird dead zone of wide receivers where you didn't love anyone. The fall off from like Rashad Bateman is pretty steep.
Yeah.
So
and yeah, I if I'm being completely honest, I Joe Burrow is great, but I don't think that I would have taken him as my next quarterback. My goal there was to see how far would somebody like Aaron Rodgers or Trey Lance fall, and for me
Yeah.
to sort of
Mm-hmm.
take my shot there, because you could have gone a whole round without another quarterback going off the board. So it would have been nice to have London on my team, but those are the lumps you take with mock drafting and doing a podcast.
So one question I have for you, Mac, and we both kind of did it, is taking a relatively early tight end.
Mhm.
I went with TJ Hawkinson at the 601. Thought you'd like that one. And you went Darren Waller at 501. We've talked about positional advantages. People go the quarterback route or the tight end route. That is basically the two single positions where you have that onesie positional advantage. Do you see yourself taking that strategy when real season-long drafts start coming along?
Definitely. And I think it's usually more of the early tight end, but again, at value. So for me, Andrews and Kelsey, I think you like where you draft in the second round, they have to be elite difference-making tight ends, or else you probably gave up some capital. Like if Mark Andrews is not the tight end 1 or 2 and you draft him in the second round, you're probably not going to be happy. Your team is probably not going to succeed at the rate that you had thought. When Darren Waller falls to the 5th round, that's where you start saying, okay, look, I'm drafting my wide receiver 2 or 3. I'm drafting my running back 2 or 3 or 4. Do I just take a guy that can be better than almost any other team that I'll face at the position? And the answer is, I think, yes. So again, we love players. We hate their ADPs. I'll take the value on Darren Waller or George Kittle or Kyle Pitts in the 5th round all day long if you let me. And I think I'm more inclined to do so with those tight ends over the quarterbacks, because historically we've seen those later round quarterbacks, 3 or 4 each year make their way into the top 12 from outside of the top 12 ADP. You just don't see that from tight ends as often. It's like those top 6, 7 tight ends finish as those top 6, 7 tight ends because of the volume and the target share that they have. Right. So
yeah,
I'm more so inclined to wait on QB.
There are so many top 12 quarterbacks throughout the season. I want to say, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but I want to say there's like 30 quarterbacks that finishes as a top 12 guy throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
And the tight end position, you are very much reliant on touchdowns because there's not a lot of tight ends that get the volume that a Darren Waller, George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Schultz even have. I omitted Hawkinson there, but so a guy like Hunter Henry that Mark just drafted, a guy like Dawson Knox, even a Cole Kmet, who I love, you're still going to have to rely a lot on touchdowns. If that doesn't happen, they're basically unstartable. They get 4 or 5 fantasy points and you walk away, and maybe you're playing a guy with Alberto or Tyler Higbee and you're fine. But if you're playing against a Darren Waller, George Kittle, a Kyle Pitts, obviously a Mark Andrews, you really need to make up so much more with your other positions. You need to have a McCaffrey on your team. You need to have a Cooper Kupp on your team to be able to overcome that advantage that they just have at that single position, because you have to start a tight end every single week.
Exactly. There was a question brought up, I think it was either Twitter or Discord. If you could take an Andrews in the 2nd or 3rd and then find value on a Waller later, would you take them both? Is there any upside to starting one, flexing one? What do you say to that?
I don't love it.
Yeah.
I still want the positions, the valuable positions of a wide receiver and running back. You want to have depth at those positions. They get hurt more often in theory. And then you get to take your shots at the breakouts as well. If you want to take a Travis Etienne, you get to do that instead of taking another. Like having Waller and Hawkinson doesn't really help you. You're not going to really get that much production from that flex position. Having to start 2 tight ends, even a Kittle and Pitts. I would prefer to have a Kittle and Sutton or
Yes.
a Pitts and Breece Hall. That's the way I would rather build it. I'm going to take my shot on one guy. I'm not going to hedge almost and say, well, I like these two guys like Schultz and Hawkinson, but I'm going to take them both at the turn and hedge, and maybe one of them breaks out. That's a wasted pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to hammer tight end, you want to do it with players that you're going to potentially stream. You take Mark Andrews in the second or the third. It's not a guy that you're just like, I'm gonna play Alberto this week. It's like, no, you're gonna start Mark Andrews because you're stuck starting Mark Andrews
every single week.
Yeah, every single week. If you're going to want to stream tight ends and play matchups, I mean, draft Cole Kmet in the 10th round. Draft Alberto, Noah Fant, Tyler Higbee, Robert Tonyan. Like, go spend your capital on those guys in the rounds, and it doesn't really matter. And if it doesn't work out or you want a different option, you just access the waiver wire. But you're not going to ever do that with Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce because you just can't,
Similar to a top 10 quarterback like Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts. If you have those guys, you're starting them whether they're playing the Buffalo Bills or the Jacksonville Jaguars. You have to start them week in and week out.
Yep.
If you're going to take a Derek Carr and a Kirk Cousins or a Trevor Lawrence and a Justin Fields, you can play the matchups and hopefully drop them, really, and have to drop them and pick up a waiver wire ad. But if you have two solid quarterbacks, you're going to take them or roster them both. So that's a roster clog. And then why would you do that?
See, here's the crazy thing about the late round quarterback and how every draft is different.
Mm-hmm.
I look at Ziplock's team, who took Josh Allen as the first quarterback off the board at the 302.
Yep.
And then I look at your team, who took Dak Prescott at the 8-1. We don't live in a world where Dak Prescott couldn't outscore Josh Allen.
Sure.
It's very possible that, I mean, we've seen Dak work at that level in the past.
He throws 3-4 touchdowns. It can happen.
He has multiple 300 plus passing games. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen him be on an outrageous fantasy clip and then, lose that to injury. But this guy was on like a 6,500 yard pace a couple years ago. It's not out of the realm of possibilities, but you spent your 3rd round pick on DJ Moore. He spent his on Josh Allen. You spent your 8th round pick on Dak Prescott. He spent his on Brandon Ayuk. Completely different tiers of players, but in my opinion, almost equal tier of quarterback. And while they're like definitely tiers apart, it's not the same tier between DJ Moore and Brandon Ayuk. It's not even close.
Right. And I mean, I think it's, I don't know. People are down on Prescott to a point. I like him because he's in a good offense. I think it could be said the same for Kyler Murray that was drafted in the 6th round to Josh Allen because they both have that rushing upside. Again, people are down on Kyler Murray. Who do you think? I had a couple things to ask you here. Who do you think's the quarterback that could really finish above Josh Allen? Who has the best chance of finishing above Josh Allen this year?
Not
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. I'll probably give it's so easy to just say Herbert or Lamar. I'll try to go a little bit deep. I'll try to go a little bit deeper than that. I think Jalen Hurts, with how much he rushes, potentially could do it. I honestly do believe Dak could do it. And then I'll put Russell Wilson as well.
Just being efficient and just still, he has to have obviously a rushing baseline to get to that point.
Yeah.
But
Joe Burrow is another good pick, as Classic Mike brings up. And I definitely don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities for sure. Zach Taylor just plays at such a slow pace that's the only thing that I worry about is they need the big play in order for their pieces from a fantasy perspective to be very, very advantageous. Jamar Chase had I think it was 6 50+ touchdowns last year. He really relied on the big play to make the most of his weeks. They just play at such a slow pace. So this is, with me taking auto drafting Burrow, I really would have taken Rodgers here instead and swap Burrow with a guy like Devontae Smith, I'd be so much happier, but it is what it is.
And it's funny because Rodgers and Burrow, despite having wildly different threats or like weapons at their disposal, they're not so different. They're very efficient. You have to project Burrow to take a step forward in rushing for him to get to that Josh Allen tier.
Yep.
Because he was so efficient, and they're one of the slowest teams in football as well. Like they don't run a lot of plays. They're very similar to Aaron Rodgers. So those two quarterbacks are almost mirror images, only 15 years apart, or however many years apart they are.
Yeah.
So really taking a 11th round Rodgers and a 7th round Burrow, just take Rodgers all day, even though, I mean, the weapons are vastly different.
Yeah. I took Dameon Pierce there.
Like it? I should have picked him
there
as
was
a spiller.
There was a couple pieces that went off the board that I would have really liked, like Ronald Jones, for example. I mean, poor CEH, man. They drafted him to be a certain something for them, and then they've just constantly brought in veteran backs to sort of crowd his opportunity. I would love to take Ronald Jones. I don't know what I feel about Michael Carter. Alexander Madison would have been just a good upside piece, but Dameon Pierce is a guy I think that he's got a very short resume, but on film, he turns a lot of heads. Like, it's almost like the Kadarius Toney thing of 2021. You know, people saw Kadarius Toney be outperformed by teammates Kyle Pitts and Van Jefferson, but then they saw, oh, look what he can do in shorter parts of the field. Look what he can do in a phone booth. He can make people miss. He's so explosive. What if that turns into a bigger opportunity in the NFL? It's the same thing with Dameon Pierce for me. But he finds himself in almost the perfect situation where he only has to beat out a guy who's missed several seasons now due to injury and inopportunity, coming back from an Achilles injury, where like his path to touches is very, very clear.
Yeah,
I'll take Dameon Pierce over Marlon Mack. No questions. I just don't want the guy who's, on the end of his rope at the running back position and coming off an Achilles. I'll just take the rookie.
One other question I wanted to ask you, and I know you just talked a lot just now, but we have Devin Singletary and James Cook going back to back, 904, 905. We have obviously Singletary having a really good finish to the year. They're both really good values going in the 9th round. But I think it's because no one really knows what's going on in Buffalo. They're one of the best offensive teams in football. James Cook is projected to be a very good pass catcher. He's got that name value with him, with Dalvin's brother. So who do you prefer at their ADP? Do you think either one are going to go up in ADP at this point, or do you just kind of like where they are?
I think they're both in a good spot. I have less confidence in Singletary just because the Buffalo Bills have been a passing team since the Josh Allen era started there in Buffalo. Right. So again, I've brought this up a couple times, but I'll bring it up again. They went out of their way to try to sign JD McKissic in free agency and failed. And to me, that just says we want a running back that is going to be a viable option for us in the passing game. That has not been Zach Moss. That doesn't project to be Zach Moss because they went out and spent 2nd round capital on James Cook. So I like James Cook a little bit more in a full PPR league than Devin Singletary, just for the fact that he's probably going to get a variety of looks through the passing game. So I also think he's a lot more dynamic than Devin Singletary. I think Devin Singletary is just a very passive runner and will take what the offensive line provides him. I really do think that James Cook can create a little bit more for himself, especially if he gets the ball in space. So we'll see. We'll see how this all works out.
Singletary, if he gets work between the 20s, 1st and 2nd down, he's not going to be worth a whole ton. That 3rd down roll, red zone roll. I mean, I want to say Buffalo passed some of the most in the red zone. And that will be James Cook if he at least can be able to pass block, because that's going to be number one for a rookie always. And that's why sometimes it's tough to get them on 3rd downs, is they need to be able to block the pass rushers for Josh Allen, even though, I mean, he could usually run away from them pretty easily. So if he gets on the field in 3rd downs, I think he will afford him more opportunities more targets, and I tend to agree with you. I really like James Cook. I hope he's kind of everything we're talking about.
I do want to issue one thing as we sort of round out this draft for anybody who's still with us. Go to our YouTube or to podcast and go back and listen at the rookie wide receivers versus sophomore options. I know in this part of the draft, it's really tempting to, spend your capital on multiple rookies. Like for me, Jamison Williams is just sitting here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna issue you to not spend all of your picks on rookies to pick one. And Michael Gallup just went, and I had him queued up, and he was locked and loaded, ready to go.
Now you're gonna pick Jameson Williams.
No. See, that's the thing. I already went with an upside piece in Chris Olave. I'm gonna go back and just take Kenny Golladay, who's just sitting there.
Yeah, I thought about him with the last pick.
I know that the upside is just like it's there. You're like, oh, well, what if this guy does this, or it's. And I'm sort of tilting on this pick. I'll take a handcuff, J.D. McKissic, to my Antonio Gibson. The point I'm trying to make is that if you have multiple exposure or more exposure to rookie wide receivers who take time to develop, your team is going to suffer. You might do well down the back stretch when they start to develop a larger role, when they start to take on somebody's role due to outplaying them or to injury or whatever the case may be. But go out and draft guys at ADP who are making their sophomore step forward, hopefully. Like, for example, Treylon Burks or Drake London. Just go draft Devontae Smith instead. And we did a lot of stats, a lot of historical research in that episode, which I think is really, really interesting. So go back and watch it. But try to just take one rookie. I think that would be my piece of advice to you. Don't stack up multiple rookies on your team. Just pick one and then pick sophomore or, third year players instead who have a better chance at returning on ADP value.
And I think that for me, I tend to agree with you. But I went with rookie running backs late in my draft because that's the easiest
Totally
way
different.
Exactly. That's the easiest way to get touches is getting opportunities on the ground. You're literally handed the football. They don't need to command targets like wide receivers do. It's a skill to command targets. And it, like Max said, it typically takes longer for wide receivers to be able to do that. Sophomore wide receivers are much more likely to get their feet under them and really produce in year one or year two. I'm losing my train of thought. But yeah, I totally agree with Mac. But I love taking running backs late in your draft, especially a guy like Terry Davis-Price that I took that could have the opportunity, especially if Elijah Mitchell gets hurt. Tyler Algier, similar to your Dameon Pierce, can get that opportunity. His path to a role is there. And I'll take Sammy Watkins, Mr. Irrelevant.
Hey, Elite Week 1 coming up. I'll quickly go over my team. You can go over yours, and then we'll pick a favorite on our way out, as well as announce our next listener league participant. I went Stephon Diggs, Deandra Swift, Zeke Elliott, Antonio Gibson, Darren Waller, Juju Smith-Schuster, auto-drafted Joe Burrow, Alan Lazard, Chris Olave, Dameon Pierce. Did draft Trey Lance, and I know that RoboChris was not happy with me. He's like, you don't need two quarterbacks. Well, I would say trade me for him. Come and get it. And then Kenny Golladay and J.D. McKissic to round out my drafts. All in all, not too bad. The fact that we only have to start 2 wide receivers in this league sort of allowed me to go out and get a third running back before I probably needed to. But you can never have too many running backs. And being able to flex Gibson would be really, really helpful. If this was a 3 wide receiver set, I would have spent more earlier attention on wide receivers. So that to me does matter. But for this league makeup, I don't mind this team. Again, I think my team would have been better if instead of Burrow, I went with like a Kareem Hunt, AJ Dillon, Devontae Smith, Elijah Moore, somebody like that would have been a little bit better for my team. But all in all, a decent team. I give it like a B.
I went McCaffrey, Barkley, DJ Moore, Deante Johnson, Josh Jacobs, TJ Hawkinson, Elijah Moore, Dak Prescott, Isaiah Spiller, Garrett Wilson, Tyler Algier, Terry Davis-Price, and Sammy Watkins. I could game this team. Hyper fragile with my first 2 picks, McCaffrey and Barkley. But if you're not first, you're last. Am I right?
That's right.
I'm okay with this team. I could game it. No really complaints. I think I would give myself. This is a very typical Landon team. I think I would give it a B as well, a B plus maybe. This is something I could see myself drafting in real life in a few weeks.
Do you have a favorite team before we walk away?
Favorite team? I did really like the start of AJ Berg. He's a super sharp drafter. And I do like the late quarterback strategy of Robo Chris. Freiermuth, Tebow fan isn't bad, but Freiermuth has been getting bad camp reports. Shoot. It's a tough one. I kind of maybe Schwartz. I know Schwartz is a great player, good drafter. I like his squad with Adams, Aaron Jones,
the
AJ
running backs
Brown,
scare me.
Kyle Pitts. Metcalf, Hurts has a nice positional advantage there. Gabe Davis, and then going with a mix of kind of the almost like a fringe zero running back or hero running back strategy there with Patterson, Cook, Ronald Jones, Boyd, Darrell Williams, and Dotson. Yeah, I'll go with them. Why not?
Scotty's team was close for me, but I don't have the faith in James Conner, especially when his touchdown rate was like a double league average last year. I don't feel good about that. Typically, the regression will happen when you just have that big of an outlier. Like the guy's just a complete outlier. I'm torn between 2 squads. I like how AJ Berg. I liked how his team sort of panned out, and he's got that elite stack, quarterback and tight end, who probably will have a lot of volume again this year. But just a lot of rookie pieces, Sky Moore, Drake London, Kenneth Walker. Ken Walker. I just don't love that.
I think Ziplock's pretty good too.
Yeah. Dawson Knox, though, he's got that taint.
That's my boy.
I'm gonna go Robo Chris. I like the Rodgers pick in the back of the 11th. I do like the Cole Kmet tight end pick, and he's got a solid batch of wide receivers and then some running backs that I also think could pan out. So I'm gonna go with Robo Chris, and that's super fitting because our next entrant into the Listener League again for this year, Chris Timmons, 2022, running it back, continues to support, continues to engage and be a part of what we are doing here. So Chris, we'll send you that invite once again. And hopefully this year you can do a little bit better in the auction. Let's just say we like to do an auction draft in the Snap Listener League. So I know that Chris is going to be a little bit sharper this year and hopefully take down a championship. So
love that.
Congrats, Chris. We're looking forward to having you again.
Really great guy. Happy to have him back.
All right, guys. NFL preseason week 1 around the corner here this week. Enjoy the football. Watch like the first quarter and then turn it off. Do yourselves a favor. For everybody who drafted with us tonight, we appreciate you being with the channel. We'll be back again next week, Tuesday evening. Maybe another mock draft show, maybe just some camp stuff. We don't know. We'll plan something fun for you there. Go ahead and check out some of those other videos. Definitely the wide receiver video is some good food for thought. And keep your eyes tuned for some short segments, like Lando said. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.